About 1 minute. We're about a minute away. If everybody wants to come in, grab a seat. We're about a minute away. Y'all ready? Ready? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to call this news conference today to provide you some information about the status of our budget and the tax rate for Lubbock County. I've been receiving a lot of calls from many people and all types of media stating that someone has said something or wanting a response from me. There's been a lot of misinformation, rumors, accusations that are not good for this Commissioner's Court or for this community. These will be addressed and we will put them behind us. We are a Commissioner's Court and our job is to work together for the best interest of the entire county. I'm going to give you an update on where we are, what the concerns are, how we move forward, followed by a brief update on the county. I'll take questions from the media at the conclusion of this news conference. So, here is where we are. Let me start by putting a few things to rest, and this is the last time that they will be mentioned by me. I don't believe I have ever used the word kook in my entire life. That word is not even in my vernacular. I have never threatened to cut funding to our volunteer fire departments. Their funding has been one of my top priorities since I took office, and we have a great relationship with our volunteer firefighters. I don't want anyone to move out of Lubbock, and I'm certainly not the liberal that just wants to raise taxes. Now, I will address the accusations of retaliation in just a few moments when I discuss the cuts that we are currently forced to make. This whole process of budgeting is complicated, and the one thing affects other things, so I'll do my best to give you the quick overview without getting too tedious. First, some basics about the tax rate. As we begin working on the tax rate each year, the Lubbock Central Appraisal District sends us the numbers. They tell us, with the current appraisal values of homes and businesses in Lubbock County, what our no new revenue tax rate will be, which is a rate that gives us the exact same dollars we had the prior year with no additional money for growth, and what the VAR rate, which will be the maximum that you can increase the tax rate without having to ask the voters for their approval. Any rate above the VAR must go to the voters for your approval, which, remember, we did 2 years ago when we asked for the Sheriff's Department salary increases. Lubbock County is the 18th largest county in Texas out of 254. Our ad valorem tax rate is in the bottom 18% of those 254 counties. 18th largest county, bottom 18% of tax rates. Now, this can only be accomplished by a lean, fiscally conservative budget. In order to create our budget for the 2025 fiscal year, the Commissioner's Court, all 5 of us, had budget meetings all summer. We talked, we discussed, we met with the Personnel Committee and the Insurance Committees, we met with department directors and other elected officials, we talked, we compromised, and we came up with the current proposed budget. We didn't always agree on everything, but we all worked together and created a lean, conservative budget that meets the needs of Lubbock County. Then the auditor's office takes our changes and compromises and determines the tax rate necessary to fund this budget. Over the past 5 years, there's been 1 year that the budgetary needs met the no new revenue rate. This was the budget, and then there was the budget 2 years ago where a significant increase in the rate was needed to support raises and disparity pay in the sheriff's office. We took this proposal to the voters, and you overwhelmingly approved it. And there have been years where we can get the tax rate to the VAR, but not all the way to the no new revenue rate, which is where we are this year. This summer, when we put all these things that were requested and the consensus of the Commissioners Court felt were needed by this growing county, the budget required a tax rate that was slightly over last year's tax rate. And since the court was committed to getting the tax rate in between the VAR and the no new revenue rate, we began cutting additional budget requests. After much work and eliminating and deferring a lot of important items, we arrived at a budget that met the VAR tax rate. Now, it was at this point, after all the work, that we found out that we would not be having a quorum at the Commissioners Court meeting in order to pass a tax rate. Because the county is an arm of the state, we must follow state law. And Texas Local Government Code 81.006 requires a quorum of 4 members of the court to be present to vote on a tax rate. And without a vote before September the 30th, the fiscal year tax rate will automatically be reverted to the no new revenue rate, which means that the growth revenue for this county will be lost. Since we became aware that this was the situation that we were in, the 3 of us on the Commissioners Court that have been present and working diligently with our department directors and auditor to now cut an already lean budget an additional $7.5 million in order to get to the no new revenue rate. Except, folks, it's not $7.5 million. You see, last year, we pulled $7 million from the fund balance of juvenile justice in order to balance that budget last year. Pulling money from fund balance or reserves is never sustainable. It is a terrible way to balance a budget. That $7 million is not available to us this year, and that's being repaid to the Juvenile Justice Operating Fund. But it doesn't end there. The VAR rate assists the county in paying for increased state mandated expenses, such as indigent legal defense and state mandated criminal justice expenses. The county was eligible for this rate adjustment of $7.9 million. But adopting the no new revenue rate does not allow for these adjustments. This money was already factored into our 2025 budget. So this is yet another $7.9 million that has to be cut. Now we're looking at $15 million or more that must be cut from this budget that we all created this summer. And this is in addition to the things that we already cut to get us down to the VAR rate. Now, I've heard questions as why do we need to raise taxes if we have so much growth money? Understand, with the no new revenue rate, there is no additional growth money. For 2025, we will be left with a budget that's approximately $12 million less than we had last year to take care of one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Texas. To get to the no new revenue rate, we are having to make the deepest, most massive cuts in the history of this county. So let's look at where some of the cuts are. There were requests from several department directors this year for a total of 54 new positions based on demands of the increased growth in this county. Some of these positions were already eliminated by the Personnel Committee. Many of these were cut by the court as we were working to get down to the VAR rate. And now further cuts are going to have to be made in order to get down to the no new revenue rate. Sheriff Rowe will be speaking to you in just a few minutes about the needs in the Sheriff's Department. I trust Sheriff Rowe, and I know this community does as well. I listen when he tells me these are positions the department needs. The county has not funded any new patrol deputies since 2019, and there has been a lot of growth in this county over the last 5 years. With the level of cuts we are now having to make, we will not be able to give Sheriff Rowe all the things he needs to protect and to serve this county. And out of the 54 positions that were requested through the county, now only 9 are being ultimately added to our budget. 4 patrol deputies for the Sheriff's Department, only half of what they need. 4 positions for the DA's office to complete staffing for the district court that was converted to a criminal court earlier this year, and 1 deputy constable. The remaining 45 positions that were requested will now go unfilled. Since I've been in office, it's been very important to me to get the county on a routine maintenance schedule for our facilities and our roads. I know that when we don't keep the things that we've been blessed with maintained, further problems develop, and it costs the county a lot more money in the long run. We've had some maintenance issues that need to be taken care of in the 2025 budget. The roof on the jail is leaking and it needs to be replaced. The elevators here at the courthouse and across the street at 916 Main, both and all need to be replaced. And especially those of you who have been stuck in the elevators know that. Both of these maintenance projects have now regretfully been deferred. We've been working for the last 5 years to get our maintenance on our county roads on a rotating basis so that every road will be touched every 8 to 10 years. We were very proud of this program as regular maintenance saves money and makes for better roads for the people in our community. Now our seal coat maintenance funding has been cut in half. Caliche maintenance has been cut in half. And the slurry funding that's been completely cut from Precinct 1. Cutting maintenance will take years for us to catch up and will take us years to recover from. So let's talk about the new road projects. When we did this budget this summer, the commissioners put in $25 million of new road projects that benefited all 4 of our precincts. 18 million of that in new projects have been cut to get to the VAR. And now the new road projects in all 4 precincts have been eliminated. This is not retaliation. All 4 precincts have had cuts. With the massive cuts we are having to make, there is now no new money for any road projects in any precinct this year. I've heard the comment that we just need to cut the fluff from the budget. The county budget is not a fluff budget. Public safety, criminal and civil courts, roads, along with the ancillary departments to support these tasks, the state established and mandated departments that we operate, such as the county and district clerks, constables, tax assessor's office, elections, treasurer's office, etc. The only thing I can consider to be fluff would be the 2 parks and the 5 clubhouses that the county operates and maintains. Now, while I think these are important for the quality of life in our communities, we have cut the revenue that all 4 precincts receive for their parks and clubhouses. Each of these facilities does have a small fund balance that they can use this year to operate their facilities. But clearly that is not sustainable. And it will have to be revisited next year to determine if or how we are going to add them back to the budget in order to continue to operate them. It is ironic to me that the ones who are forcing the county to cut the tax rate are the ones that are complaining the most about having to cut in roads and parks. You can't have one without the other. If the tax rates are going to be severely cut, spending will also have to be severely cut. That is the reality. There has been a suggestion that if we just pull from our reserves to balance the budget, this, folks, is not sustainable. We will not be able to recover from it next year. And let me explain what cutting reserves looks like. Lubbock County has a bond rating. The higher the rating, the lower the interest rate we take when we take projects to bond. Selling bonds is the process that entities use to fund capital projects such as roads, a medical examiner's office, building projects, etc. I've worked hard over the last few years to get our bond rating as high as possible. We're currently at a AA+ bond rating, which is great, one of the best bond ratings in the state. This saves the county hundreds of dollars in interest payments. There are 4 important factors that Standard & Poor's use to determine the bond rating for our county. First, conservative budgeting. Second, a growing and prosperous economy. Third, a government structure with leadership that matches the growing economy. And fourth, the amount of reserves that the county has should be between 4 and 6 months of operating expenditures. We have increased our bond rating since I've been in office. And there's one more level we can achieve, that's called a AAA bond rating, to save even more on capital projects. Currently, Lubbock County has 4.5 months in reserves. If we pull money out of reserves to meet this year's budget, it will take us below the required minimum 4 months of reserves. Along with the backward trajectory that these massive budget cuts will cause, this will destroy our bond rating. If we do this, it will take approximately 5 years to recover from these cuts, to rebuild our reserves to a level that will allow us to go back after bonds. And we won't even be able to look at refinancing these bonds if the interest rate drops. Let's talk about the impact to the jail. 20 years ago, our jail was designed with voter-approved bonds and was built to serve Lubbock County for the next 20 years. We're now 20 years later. The original bond is almost paid off. Our jail currently is at maximum capacity. We're housing approximately 90 inmates in jails in other parts of the state. Last year, the cost for housing inmates in other counties was about $3 million. We're moving some money from other jail funds to cover the cost in this coming year, and again, that's not sustainable. And we'll have to add that back to the budget next year. But folks, if our bond rating is damaged, it will take us at least 5 years before we can look at an expansion. And the numbers of inmates, the cost of housing them elsewhere, will continue to grow and get more expensive as our population grows. The magnitude of what it will take to catch up, to get this overcrowding situation taken care of, is almost unimaginable. At this time, I want to introduce you to our friend, the great Sheriff of Lubbock County, Sheriff Kelly Rowe.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, everybody, all of those in attendance today. It's good to see each and every one of you. Obviously, I'm going to be coming from a slightly different angle, as I am one of the elected officials that has to go through the budget process with the entire Commissioners Court. And as a reminder, you know, as of this summer, I have been at Lubbock County now for 25 years. I have been your sheriff for the past 15 as of just a few days ago. And, you know, I take note in the fact that over that period of time, I've been through this process over all of these years and with multiple different iterations of Commissioners Courts through that time. And I have to say that this summer was absolutely one of the most exceptional of all of those I've seen previous. And I think a lot of that comes back to that my opening comment and my opening statement when I sat down for our public budget hearing this summer. And I made the statement that I just can't understand how it is that we operate the largest county between the Metroplex and El Paso, and we have absolutely, or we do absolutely no combined long-term or joint long-term planning amongst the various departments of the county. And what that translates to is that although the sheriff's office, and I'm sure numerous other departments and offices throughout the county do that particular long-term planning, none of it is done in a way where it's together. And so what ultimately ends up happening is as we enter into the budget process each summer, what I've unfortunately come to characterize as a fly by the seat of our pants and with the tail wagging the dog throughout the whole thing. And again, I have stated it repeatedly that we have entirely too many things going on, too many priorities happening to try to operate and do and conduct our business that way each and every year, and not knowing what other wild cards or surprises we may have happen throughout the course of the summer as the Commissioners Court is working through that process. Everyone, and the judge mentioned it, everyone should take note that this year alone, we were told right off the get-go that there was $52 million in requests above what was the total approved budget from last year. The vast majority of those requests, I will tell you, were requests that have been made previously year by year. And for whatever reason, by the time the budget process is completed, they don't end up in the budget, only creating a perpetual snowball effect of getting larger and larger year by year, and most importantly, more expensive with each passing year. As we stand here today, we again see court members whose clear top priority is hitting a certain tax rate, and not the list of priorities that continues to grow exponentially, and as I said earlier, it gets more expensive. Judge mentioned the detention center and the roof. As I have discussed this with our facilities director, that roof has been known for at least the last 3 years to need a significant total repair. As of today, I can tell each and every one of you in here, there are 22 significant documented leaks in that building. Now, notwithstanding what that damage can be happening where any water intrusion may be occurring, what I can speak to is the cost of all the electronics, fire control systems, and I can't begin to even explain to everybody the immense amount of work product that has been lost in various offices and other places throughout the building when we have a major flood occur. Most importantly to that, and as everybody recalls, you know, when we went through the last process and we were talking to all the community members and we were taking and giving tours of the old facility, that was a characterization I received in a meeting earlier, was if we continue to ignore these problems out at the jail, not only are we significantly shortening the lifespan of that structure, which was intended to last a minimum of 50 years. It has been open now 15. There is no way we will make it to the 50-year mark with the amount of damage that's occurring, and what we will ultimately get into at some point when it becomes an absolute crisis. Let me be clear with everybody here. I am certainly, and I think most of you who know me and have visited with me for more than 5 minutes know, I am certainly no fan of taxes. But the county has grown and will continue to grow, or as it continues to grow, I have to plan and address those needs, recognizing fully that this is exacerbated by decades, not years, but decades, of not maintaining a steady growth that I clearly see causes frustration with a lot of people in the room when any exceptional increases now seem to be so dramatic. As is always the case, when this comes, or when the court hits this loggerhead where we are right now, right at the tail end of the process, the discussions and debates all come back to public safety and the sheriff's office. And granted, the sheriff's office does represent one of the largest portions of the total county budget. But it's important to remember that the sheriff's office also needs to have good workspaces that are functional, that everybody can operate in. We need to have roads that we can get down safely to respond to calls and do those types of things. But again, guys, the times are changing. And for everyone in this room, and I can tell for a lot of our guests that are here today, have heard me at one time or another at some public event where I'm speaking. And I talk about just the changes within our world right here. Since 2014, we have seen a dramatic change in how law enforcement and what is happening with law enforcement across this county. The absolute influx of narcotics is staggering. The violence and everything else that comes with the distribution of those narcotics would shock you. I never thought, as I'm standing here in front of all of you today, that I could look each of you straight in the eye and tell you in Lubbock, Texas, we are experiencing on average drive-by shooting every day. That's something we hear in Chicago, not in Lubbock, Texas. Now, we've got some great things to be proud of. You know, we've got our Texas Anti-Gang Center. We've got our Caprock HIDA. In fact, I'd like to take an opportunity, because the captain's in the room here, to point out that he was just recognized 2 weeks ago at our HIDA executive meeting as having the second most productive HIDA group in the entire Texoma HIDA. To give you some scale on that, the Texoma HIDA includes us here in Lubbock. It includes the entire Metroplex and part of East Texas to the Louisiana border and the entire state of Oklahoma. Now, I can't tell you more than I can say when we find out and we realize that's what we're faced with here today. Our requests this year alone, on the law enforcement side, I'm going to go back to the same point, were requests we made last year. Again, I see Judge Hawker sitting in the back. He takes care of a very, very special docket for us called the mental health docket. He knows firsthand how much we are dealing with individuals with serious mental illness and intellectual and developmental disabilities that are entering into the criminal justice system, and how long they take to process and get out of our building, and get out of our system, I should say. I mean, we're talking about literal years here. Individuals are sitting out there at the jail. So when I'm in and I'm talking about pay increases and I'm talking about adding staff, it's because I'm trying to minimize the issues that are coming with the things we are dealing with today. A much more violent inmate in a lot of cases, whether that's just because they're purely violent, they're an active gang member, or whether they're suffering from a serious mental illness and it's going to take time to get them stabilized, whether they're working short-handed in a place where we have an absolute mandatory minimum number of people on duty. I mean, these are non-negotiable items, folks. The state tells us very clearly that at that detention center out there by the airport, I have to have one officer on duty for every 48 inmates, 24 hours a day. And when we're suffering short, it makes it much more difficult, because now we're having to demand extra duty from people. They're getting less days off, and therefore they're burning out faster on the job. And I'm telling you right now, you know, when you look at it across the board in the world of law enforcement and corrections, the last analysis I saw said applications for law enforcement were down 65% across the nation. So you recognize the challenges we have when we're trying to keep and maintain these folks. It's why I'm going to continue to chirp year in and year out to increase and raise salaries, keep us competitive with the market in this area, in this region where we tend to lose people to. We want to offer them incentives by recognizing their responsibilities and the difficulties and challenges of doing their individual jobs every day. It's a different world out there. And so again, I can't emphasize enough that when I step into this budget process each and every year, after we have spent at a minimum 4 months preparing, I think you guys have sensed it since last year with me, my frustration has gotten higher and higher, because every bit of that 4 months worth of work, all of the hours that our executive staff have spent culling through requests of the entire department. And then we walk in here and we're greeted with an arbitrary response of, well, we need to hit this number and that's the only number we want to talk about. Well, that would have been great to hear about months earlier before we spent all of that time preparing. And I'm sorry to say, it is, to me anyway, and I'm just going to speak for myself, but I think most of my executive staff would agree with me, It's pretty well considered, or at least I consider it, an insult to walk into a commissioner's court meeting in a budget workshop setting and have somebody who has absolutely no knowledge, no experience, doing the challenging and tough jobs we do each and every day to tell us what the needs and the wants are. You know, come to me with something realistic. Don't just say no for the sake of saying no. Don't write something off for the sake of writing it off. Let's have a discussion about it. I have yet to this day, save this summer, 24 years of budget discussions I have been involved in, both in the public and behind closed doors. I have never had a commissioner's court member state a full disagreement with anything I've ever requested. They were completely satisfied with the justifications. They completely understood the need. They recognized the growth was happening. They're seeing the houses going up. They're seeing the new businesses going in. But yet when they come out here, they refuse to make a tough decision to get us what we need to have. So again, forgive me for my tone changing and the frustration that is ever present on this note. But nonetheless, like I said, we've got serious jobs to do. Each and every one, for the most part, of the men and women that work at the Lubbock County Sheriff's Office perform very dangerous and high-risk duties each and every day. Ask yourself, are you willing to get out of your car at 3 in the morning when it's pitch dark along the side of a quiet highway and have to talk to somebody you have no clue who is? How many of y'all are prepared to deal with a 6'4", 350-pound guy who's suffering from schizophrenia the moment he walks in the jail? And then try to tell me what the needs and the wants are of the sheriff's office. That's what we spend 4 months doing, is culling out those needs and those wants, so that by the time it is reaching the commissioner's court members, we have established what we know to be and what we believe to be a reasonable request for that year. It's the very reason why, since the day I took office, we have been working through a 5-year strategic planning process. We just completed year 5 of the last plan. This fall, after this budget is completed, we will begin the next 5-year planning process, because we recognize that we're not the only department or office in the county. So we want to look at things across a lengthy time period so that when we do make our requests, they are as reasonable as they possibly can be, that they don't end up involving, if we can at all help it, the potential for a tax increase. But guys, again, this county is growing, and I'm here to tell you, you can only kick the can down the road so far. There's a former commissioner in the room that I think probably remembers me telling him at one point or another, because every one of them's heard it from me at some point in time. Guys, you can only dig a hole so deep before there's not a ladder long enough or tall enough to get you out of it. Because again, 25 years I've watched it. And I get the challenges and I get the difficulties that they face across the board, that they've got to take, they've got to take into account, the public's feelings and everything else on this. But I think it's very, very important to note, and as I tell any candidate that's running for office, be careful what you're out there telling people and what you're convincing potential future constituents of until you actually get to the county, crack the hood open, and see where the county is at today. Because I do remember the days, you gave a great reference in what with regard to the bond election, but I still remember fondly several commissioners, the first commissioners I ever met, going around talking about, we got the second lowest tax rate in the state. Well, as a result of that, departments were getting choked out to the point that now you see the budget cycle for 24-25 coming in, and there being $52 million in requests. And those requests, like I said, for the vast majority, for the far most point, were things that they have known about, that have been requested in previous years. And like I said, and I want to dovetail on what the judge said a little bit ago. The simple fact of the matter that it only is going to continue to grow and get worse. Any decisions made this summer are only going to exacerbate future years when we're already behind the 8 ball going into these processes year by year. So again, Judge, thank you to the commissioners who have been who have been continuing to try to get through this process. We have had to remain fluid to try to keep up with various requests for new numbers, new changes, more cuts, those types of things. But again, trust when I tell you, I will continue to do what I need to do each and every summer. I will continue to present our needs and justify them fully, and we will just have to see what the future holds. So on that note, Judge, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you for the way you and your department protect and serve the people of Lubbock County. Thank you. There is one last thing I want you to be aware of, and that is the situation with UMC. As you know, UMC is the county hospital. The Commissioners Court appoints their board of directors and approves their budget and their tax rate. I trust Mark Funderburk and the UMC board to know what they need to operate the hospital, set the budget, and have the appropriate amount of reserves, which were life-saving during our COVID pandemic. Mr. Funderburk was called out of town today and can't be here, but I will, however, tell you and read his statement here in a moment. But without a quorum on Monday, we will not be able to vote on the tax rate for the hospital either. And they'll also have to revert back to the no new revenue rate, which is scary when we're talking about medical care in our community, including our state-mandated indigent care. Mark Funderburk states, UMC's mission is charity and its practice is stewardship. Every single dollar of tax revenue goes directly to the cost of care for unfunded patients, which outpaces tax revenue by 3 to 1. And UMC's tax revenue equals just 3.6% of its budget compared to an average of 24% for all comparable hospital districts in Texas. Every dollar of tax revenue is needed. Every dollar makes a difference. That's Mark Funderburk. So all these cuts are moving Lubbock County backwards, and it will take years for us to recover. Pulling money from funds that are for other purposes are not sustainable and will catch up with us next year. As the sheriff pointed out, the infamous term kicking the can down the road is in full effect here. It hurts my heart to see the progress that we have made in the last 5 years now be torn completely apart. I implore our entire Commissioners Court to be present on Monday so that we can make decisions that will be not so devastating to this year and to the future of this county. I do believe that we have a responsibility to take care of the things that we've been blessed with in the county, along with the vision to look ahead and be ready for the continued growth that is coming. The three of us that have been here have been diligently working on how to make these cuts. They've been suggestions that will not completely rectify it, but will lessen the blow to the backward trajectory of the county. One suggestion would be to consider a tax rate anywhere above the no new revenue rate would remain the county eligible for the credits for indigent defense expenses. But in order to do this, we must have the full Commissioners Court show up for work next Monday morning. We cannot vote on a tax rate without the quorum of at least 4 commissioners. Monday is our final meeting before that deadline that the state mandates to pass the tax rate. So that's where we are. But regardless of what happens on Monday, we must move forward. And that's really what I'm here to talk about. I love Lubbock County, and this is a wonderful community to live in. West Texans have a great reputation of being kind and welcoming. That's who we are. But this is not what I've seen in the last few weeks. While some of the cuts to services we are making to this county hurts my heart, it's actually the divisiveness that I've seen among our people that hurts even more. As I travel around the state to various meetings, I get comments all the time about how well Lubbock is doing, how we're preparing for the growth in our rapidly growing county, and admiring our vision that we've been looking at toward the future. Many counties in Texas are not blessed with the growth that we're having, so I never want to take this growth for granted. I want to mention another aspect of growth in our community. New businesses come to communities that are growing and looking forward to the future. I'm so excited about the opening of Leprino Foods' mozzarella cheese factory later this year. I was on the committee to help bring Leprino Foods to Lubbock, along with Mayor Dan Pope, President Lawrence Skubinek from Texas Tech, John Osborne from LEDA. One of the things that Leprino was impressed with was how well the city leadership, county leadership, and Texas Tech leadership work so well together. That was very important to them. Having leadership that works together to support a growing community is important to bring businesses like Leprino to our community. Leprino will provide about 600 good paying jobs to our citizens and will infuse $1 billion a year into the economy of Lubbock. A growing, thriving economy is an important factor to continue to bring businesses like this to our area. As I mentioned with Leprino Foods, it's been important for me from day one, when I was elected as your county judge, to work with city leadership. We can do more for our community when we work together. Just recently, we had the ribbon cutting for the city-county health department, which we've been working on building together since 2021, when we saw the need during the pandemic of having a combined health department. This past spring, we broke ground on the Hope Center, a partnership project with the city, county, and Star Care to improve the way we care for the mental health in our community. Just recently, we broke ground on the Tag Center, a collaborative effort with the city, county, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to combat crime in our communities. I'm very proud of these collaborative projects that benefit all of the citizens of our communities. These collaborative projects are noticed around the state, and other cities and counties come to Lubbock to see how we're doing these amazing projects together. I also want to take a moment to brag a little bit about this county that I love so much. I never want to lose sight of how blessed we are. We have an incredible elections office, and I appreciate the hard work of Roxine Stinson and her staff. We are the crown jewel in the state when it comes to elections, because our elections office does it right. While others and many other counties with issues that they have running their elections, we don't have that problem here in Lubbock County, thanks to our incredible staff and thanks to the support of this Commissioner's Court. We have a stellar IT department that touches every area of our county services: law enforcement, jail, courts, the district attorney's office, district and county clerks, car registration, budgets, human resources. I could go on and on. We've seen some counties that have had their systems hacked, and it's been devastating to those counties. An attempt was made to hack into our own system, but the quick action of the education of our employees who knew what to do, and the quick and swift action of our IT department had it isolated in minutes and protected our system from damage. In today's world, this is one of the most important ways we can protect our county, is to protect its data. And I can't thank our IT department enough for their hard work. When I took office, our guardianship program was in trouble. Today, we have completely turned this around, and our guardianship program is now the gold standard of Texas. We had a recent audit by the state, and that audit showed that we were excellent. And I want to thank our entire guardianship team for all their hard work. When I took office, the medical examiner's office was in major trouble, and we eventually had to outsource our autopsy services to Fort Worth. But after bringing on Dr. Addington as our medical examiner, he has turned this office completely around. We're so excited about the new state-of-the-art medical examiner's office currently under construction, and we're thrilled to have Dr. Chundru as our forensic pathologist, and that we have our autopsy services now right back here in Lubbock where it belongs. One of the things I'm most excited about is the opportunity to work with Texas Tech Health Sciences Center on a program to train forensic pathologists at our new medical examiner's office. When our community works together, it's better for everyone. I could go on and on about the excellence that's going on in this county right now. I publicly now want to thank our department directors and our employees for their consistent and amazing hard work. Lubbock is being noticed far beyond our county limits, and I'm proud to serve with each and every one of you. Lubbock County is gaining a voice of influence now at both the state and federal levels, and that makes me very excited about our future. I want us to continue to have a vision for the future in order to make this place a better place for our kids, our grandkids, and our generations to come. As we look ahead, we pray for God's blessings on our endeavors. We pray for His grace and His mercy. And we pray that we will be unified as a community in our love for Him and our love for each other. May God bless you, and may God bless Lubbock County. This time I will turn this over to media for questions, either for myself or for Sheriff Rowe.
You talked about the budget process all summer, having discussions, making compromises, making changes to the budget, and now we're in a situation where compromise can't be reached. Did that come as a surprise? Were you blindsided by that at all?
No, you remember we had two commissioners that attempted this 5 years ago, so we knew that it was there. But when we finally were able to get to a point on our budget where we could lock in that VAR rate, that's when we knew that this walkout was going to be imminent.
Assuming Corley and Rocker are watching this right now, is there anything that I know earlier you said you implored them to come to the next meeting. There's one meeting left. Is there anything else you want to say to them?
Oh, just implore them to please come to work. We can work on this budget together. We can work from this dais in altering this budget to get us to a tax rate that all of us can agree to. That's what I implore them to do. Come to work.
And how much larger is the proposed budget?
I'm sorry, larger? It's actually, the proposed budget is $7.5 million more than it was last year. So that's that $7.5 million plus the extra $7.9 million because we lose that indigent defense credits that we get. So that's what we're going to have to cut on Monday morning to get us down to a budget that matches the no new revenue rate.
Judge, can you speak to the $7 million that's been talked about as far as the budget's concerned? The commissioners have mentioned, Commissioner Rackler and Corley have mentioned that it's we got a $7 million surplus, but I've also heard that there's a $7 million decrease in that if this budget is passed. Can you clarify that?
Well, the $7 million, pardon me, Ken, I'm sorry, good question. The $7 million surplus is what I mentioned when we talk about reserves. That's what we hold back in reserves for operating. That's where we need to get kind of that sweet spot of 4 to 6 months. Currently, we are at 4.5 months of operating expenses. So when we talk about reserves, that's what we're talking about. But we must maintain that. All entities, all governmental entities must maintain reserves. Now, for us, that 3 to 6 months gets us to a place where we can maintain our really good bond rating. That's the purpose. Once we maintain that bond rating, then we're able to get good low interest rates. The higher the bond rating, the lower the interest rates. We dip into reserves and we drop that down, we're in danger of destroying our bond rating.
Are you anticipating having to draw money out of reserves to fund next year's budget?
Unfortunately, Alex, yes. It's the only way we can. One of the things that I have been committed to is not defunding the Sheriff's Department. We need public safety. And as Sheriff Rowe told you, actually public safety is the largest portion of our budget. approximately 60% of our budget, or more actually, is in public safety. That's public safety for the Sheriff's Department, the jail, our patrol divisions, our juvenile justice center, our volunteer fire departments. All of that under the umbrella of public safety constitutes well more than half, well more than 60% of our budget. So just to say, well, we just do across the board cut of say 10% means that I have to go back to the sheriff and tell him to cut his already lean, already deferred budget by another 10%. That's defunding the Sheriff's Department, something that I will absolutely not do. We will not defund our public safety, period. And we are not going to balance this budget on the backs of these great employees out here. They work too hard to serve the people of Lubbock County. You know, in the last couple of years, it's just been a couple of years, we have had less turnover in Lubbock County than ever in its history. It's because we have chosen to treat our employees well, to do a good job in providing them the benefits such as insurance, for instance. We've got one of the best insurance programs, and we're going to get it better even. Most of our employees know that we're changing our insurance program this year, but we are not going to do it on their backs. I know there's been other entities that have changed their insurance and put that burden back onto the employees. Well, I don't think that's right. I think that we honor our employees by providing them good competitive salaries, giving them good, safe workplaces, and then making sure that we retain them. We recruit, we train, and we retain. That's how we get good employees to work for Lubbock County and continue to work for Lubbock County.
You mentioned parks, clubhouses being some of the first things that might have to be defunded. What are some other consequences that we might see that maybe we wouldn't think about?
Well, most, I would say, the consequences that we're looking at now to get us to Monday's budget is going to involve deferring or involve pulling out for unsustainable funds. Now, when you have unsustainable funds, you have to look at next year. Let me reiterate. Last year, we took out of the Juvenile Justice Fund balance $7 million. Well, that was last year. But the promise last year is that we would put it back. Well, here we are. We used that reserve fund to fund juvenile justice. We can't do that this year. Now we have to fully fund them. Anything that we do that pulls money out of a reserve, a fund balance, is only good for 1 year and 1 year only. And then we have to make the hard decision next year to increase the budget, causing those taxes then to potentially double. That's what we're looking at. And that's what's kind of frightening to me. Yeah, we're making a decision to take care of the tax rate today, but what is the impact to this next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years? That's what we're dealing with. So it has a long-term, maybe an octopus finger effect. It affects not only the budgetary issues that we have in the upcoming years, it also affects, as we talked about, our bond rating, which causes the county to spend more money in interest rates and allows us not to go out and get these projects like the expansion of the jail that's much needed. We're going to have to put that on hold. We can't do that with a destroyed bond rating. So that's kind of the fingers of what's happening if we come back and adopt a no new revenue tax rate. But it's something that we're going to be forced into on Monday.
Two commissioners feel like the VAR was getting crammed down their throat. What was the majority? Was the majority of the court unwilling to negotiate earlier in this process? The simple answer to that is no. We're always willing to negotiate. We're always willing to compromise. It's what we did all summer. We compromised. We looked at positions. We made hard decisions as to what we will fund and what we need to retain to meet the needs of our growing county. If you're talking about being forced down the throat, just look at what the two are doing. They're forcing the no new revenue rate.
Two are forcing the no new revenue rate by not showing up to vote.
I think those two commissioners would probably say that they're doing their constitutional duty to represent their constituents here. You're saying, this is not a political question, by the way, that's just what they've said. How do you respond to that?
Well, I know it's parsing words a little bit, but this is not a constitutional duty, it's a statutory. This procedure of having four to look at a tax rate is not in the Constitution, it's in the statutes. I know that's minor, but that's just, that's the reality. It's an archaic law that was put into place really to deal with commissioners' courts that have been dealing with hurricanes and flooding down in the valley. We can go into history of that if you want to. It was never designed so that the minority of the court can control the majority of the court. We are a one person, one vote society. It's what we do in democracy. It's what democracy is. You know, I remember last year when the Democrats walked out and broke quorum at the state legislature. And we Republicans really went up in arms about that the Democrats would go and do something like that, would break quorum, come back and make your vote. Represent your people. And that's all I'm asking these two commissioners to do, is come to work and represent. Mr. Flores.
So you use the word divisiveness.
Yes, sir.
Sheriff Rowe used the word insult. It was an insult. Will this court be able to work past Monday regardless what happens to achieve what the county needs?
Well, I hope you heard what my sentiments were in my statement, that the divisiveness does hurt, but I am willing to put that behind so that we can go forward, because I think the future of Lubbock County is that important. This pettiness that we're hearing has got to stop. And if it can't stop with them, it'll stop with me.
Judge,
Mr. Huff.
The commissioners have said they've received tons of phone calls from their constituents, upwards of 500 to 800, not wanting this to pass. Have you received similar phone calls or emails or anything from constituents from Lubbock County echoing that you do want to move forward?
Yes, sir. I've had many conversations with community on doing the right thing for Lubbock County. They want the tax rate to be as low as possible. I absolutely agree with them. We are and will make this tax rate as low as possible. But we're also going to meet the needs of this county, not the wants, not the wishes, not the hopes, but the needs. We will have a needs-based budget, and we will have a tax rate that will support that needs-based budget. I want to thank you all for being here. Again, may God bless you. Do you have any, first of all, do you have any questions for Sheriff Rowe? He'll be available for sound bites as well. Thank you all. May God bless you again.